Do you guys like my hat? I'm wearing because we're talking about space. Specifically, we're gonna dig into, and my computer's frozen again. There it goes. We're gonna specifically dig into how the arts, specifically music, science, specifically astronomy, and superstition, specifically astrology, tend to advance at the exact same times in human history within a pattern. And to do that, we're going to look at the history of constellation mapping starting in prehistory, because no human advancement happens in a vacuum, unless it's the vacuum of space. So let's talk about what a constellation is first. All you need to know is the sun, aside from universe expansion, pretty much not moving. All the stars around us, pretty much not moving. We are spinning in like a nightmarish teacup rag from Disneyland, which means depending on the time of year or the season, depending on the time of day, depending on where you are on the planet, you are seeing a different image of the night sky. Typically, that image is like moving westward as you go through it, which is important for how astronomy and astrology kind of co-develop in early prehistory. The one other thing to note here, which becomes important once we get to the 20th century advancements, is that we can see the stars from our vantage point on Earth in two dimensions or on a plane, but they exist in three dimensions. And the part we often miss with our naked eye is the depth of stars, or how many light years away from us they are. So, with that out of the way, let's get into this. Astronomy and astrology, uh, we have our first notes of them in history at the same time, which is in ancient Sumer in Mesopotamia. We have several reliefs showing different gods facing the solar disk. Now, of course, this was a time period before the scientific method was designed, so superstition is often used as a way to explain or make our scientific theories before we have actual scientific theories. This was all happening around 870 BC. And then by the 200s BC, we're starting to get cultural exchange, specifically with the priest scientist Berossus from Babylon introducing astronomical concepts to Greek scholars. Looking at his work and through his own mathematical computations, the Hellenistic scholar Aristarchus brings up the theory of heliocentricity. He knew that the Mesopotamians understood that the Earth and all the five visible planets to the naked eye revolved around the sun. But all of Aristarchus's Greek friends completely disagreed with him. And they fully rejected his theory, which is why when the first Greek horoscopes for the zodiac we use today was written, it was written using a geocentric theory, believing that the Earth was the center of the universe. It's not until much later in the mid 600s AD that we find our first extant star atlas or star catalog, which is a like mathematically and geographically precise way of identifying all of the stars in our galaxy or in our solar sphere. And it was discovered in a cave in China. It's likely that there were a few more before this, but what's important to know here is that um, astronomy is being explored by many different cultures at the same time, but they're often coming to slightly different conclusions because cultural exchange is difficult during this time period. You know, we of course also know that the Mayans and early Americans and whoever was doing whatever the heck with Stonehenge were using the constellations and specifically the seasonal movement with the sun to measure the passing of time. So everybody's interested in astronomy. They're not communicating as well as they could, which is a good time to bring up the difference between astronomy and astrology. So in this early part of prehistory, they're kind of happening at the same time. Today, they're very distinct processes. So astronomy is a science. It's the study of stars, planets, and their physical and chemical properties. So how fast is the Earth spinning? What chemical reactions are happening in the sun? What is a black hole actually made of? These are all astronomical questions. Astrology is a superstition, which means it has not been proved in any means by the scientific theory, although it was probably inferred based on a real observation. And it's the supposed influences on the position of stars and planets on human affairs, which is where, with the Greek geocentric theory, we have, well, if the stars were here when you were born, that means this is your personality and this is what's going to happen to you. It's important to note here that although astronomy and astrology are almost totally separate today, superstition is still a valid part of the human advancement process because it often includes a heavy amount of observation and it often spurs scientific studies. But of course, please don't quote your zodiac sign in a scientific paper. All right, we're going to jump forward to the Renaissance and see a little more of how these three different things are interplaying with each other. So in 1619, Johann Kepler publishes the Harmonices Mundi, where he tries to explain he both tries to prove heliocentric theory, which has still not been accepted in Europe, despite the Mesopotamians having figured it out a long time ago. And he tries to use our mathematical understanding of sound waves, specifically relating to polyphony and intervallic harmony, to explain how stars move, how the five planets that are visible to the naked eye move, and how everything functions in our universe. He claims that the universe is producing sounds in perfect harmony that our ears can't hear. Now, his contemporary Tycho Brahe, of course, does not agree with heliocentricity because who would? I'm such a good professional researcher, but despite still believing in geocentrism, he publishes a catalog of over 1,000 stars and highly accurate mathematical locations of where they are in the night sky. Then in 1648, we have the first um, recordings, as in written down and is accessible today in 2025, piece of music that's themed around space. Of course, this is during a time period when the church is still paying for most art that's happening. So it's based on Psalm 19, Die Himmel erzählen die Ehre Gottes, which means roughly the heavens expound on the glory of God. It was a vocal quartet and it was first performed in St. Thomas's Church, pictured here. It's not an accident that music and science and new superstitions about the galaxy making sounds are all happening at the same time. This is because the Renaissance was a period of improved quality of life for the average citizen, increased funding for the arts, better organization and cultural communication. Those are all of the factors that make everything in our lives advance. And often these compound on each other. We have music being used to explain science, which encourages the church to put music or to put funding into science-based music, which encourages new geocentric star catalogs. It's all connected. All right, we're going to jump forward like 300 years and across the continent to America. In 1916, Albert Einstein gives us our first theory of black holes. And this, combined with the increasing number of faint stars suddenly being researchable through telescopes and other deep sky objects, the International Astronomical Union decides this is getting really confusing and we need an organizational system. So they take the 12 constellations that the Hellenistic Greeks were using, they add another 76, and they approve 88 constellations that help us organize how we research faint stars and deep sky objects. In 1930, Eugene Joseph Delport draws regions based on each of these and names them after the constellations within them. So the Aries region, the Taurus region. Also, Holt's writing the planets during this time, but y'all already know about him. I don't want to talk about him. I want to talk about Mary Lou Williams, my queen, the greatest jazz mentor to ever live. So factors like the invention and improvement of telescopes and the theories of Einstein create an astronomical boom in America, which leads to the general public having a craze around astrology. And Mary Lou Williams is super into astrology during this period. And she ends up being the first composer to make a piece of musical work that's based not on space generally, but specifically on constellations. It's possible, and according to Mary Lou Williams, Robert Forsyth may have done it before her, but he only talked about 3 or 4 constellations, if that's true. And I also couldn't find much reputable research to even say that he actually wrote any of those pieces of music. So if anybody knows about that, please send the links in the comments because I want to learn about it. So we're going to take her first track as an opportunity for me to go on another science tangent. Remember how I said that for us on Earth, we can't see the depth of stars or how far away they are? We're going to look at Aries, which is the first track on her record, and identify how that's important. So you can see this Colorado-ish shaped box is the Aries region that Delport drew out. It's named Aries after the constellation within it. And you can see that the brightest star within this constellation is Hamal, which is 66 light years away. And the dimmest looking one there at the tail end is Mesarthim, which is 204 light years away. And this was a discovery that was made possible through telescopes, is that the stars in the constellations aren't necessarily actually near each other at all, like at all. Of course, Mary Lou Williams wasn't considering uh, data information like this. She was using an astrological perspective. And actually, one thing most people don't know is she used influences from artists under that sign for each sign's composition. So for track one, Aries, she picked Billie Holiday and Ben Webster, who were both Arieses, and they were known for being changeable, moody, and impulsive, according to Mary Lou Williams. Now, the late 20th century, the space craze only booms, and so does the post-tonal music composition craze, and it is not an accident that these happen at the same time. Between the first man on the moon and the many satellites that we send into orbit, including the Hubble Space Telescope in 1990, we start getting a lot of new mathematical data on deep space, on planets, and on stars. And a lot of these pieces of data are converted into tone poems. Haig Boyajian is one of the most prolific post-tonal writers of this time, specifically in constellations, with works like Scorpius Rising and Cassiopeia. What he's doing is he's taking the data that places like NASA are releasing to the public and converting those numerical pieces of data into sound waves on something like a piano or an orchestra. Philip Glass is doing the same thing, and I have to mention that Jethro Tull is doing it too, just because that's super cool. We also had some really exciting discoveries from the Hubble Space Telescope, including that the Andromeda Galaxy, housed within the Andromeda region with the constellation Andromeda, you can see how this is all coming together, in many, many, many years from now, will crash into our galaxy. And that definitely doesn't fill me with existential dread. But all of this new data is leading to like these cool advancements in music. And you'll notice that I'm kind of using the same types of images over and over again when I explain specific constellations. And that's due to a very recent scientific piece of work that was established in December 2024. This is the 88 Constellations Project. It's done by the NSF Noir Labs, and it's an attempt to have high definition annotated images of every single constellation region accessible to the public for educational and research purposes. So we're getting into scientific dissemination. And of course, because I'm a proud Spartan, go green, we have to talk about some of the artistic things happening at MSU. In spring semester of 2025, Carolina John Lehrer performed To the Sun, which is a new piece. If you look at this image in the bottom right, that is sheet music. Yeah, I reacted the same way, the way you're reacting right now. But so what this is data from the Parker Space Probe, which was launched back in 2018 and is currently orbiting the sun closer than any satellite ever has in order to help us better understand solar wind. So the black or white notehead tells us what type of data Parker is collecting. The distance between each note is telling us how long between data collection Parker is getting a reading. And the note height, I forget what that exactly is, but that's telling John when to be loud or soft. And John's picking the notes. All he knows is black key or white key. So this is a very cool experimental piece of music. And if there's a carillon near you, go check it out, because you also get to play along on your phone, and your phone makes sounds. It's super fun. But here's an example, instead of scientific dissemination, of musical dissemination of scientific information. This is an amazing way to get the general public involved with new research and make them aware of some of the advancements we're making in science, in this case, specifically with understanding solar wind. Okay, so why is any of this important? Firstly, just space research is important and should be supported. Katy Perry. But on an on the ground sense, it's important to recognize that these things happen in patterns. And they have a feedback loop with each other. But typically, what's happening is we have an observation that's leading to some type of superstition, like astrology, which paves the way, and the public interest, and therefore the funding for scientific study, which leads, in this case, to astronomy, leads to new data, leads to new satellites, leads to new understandings about the chemical composition of both space and our own Earth. And then that information has to be disseminated or interpreted in some way. In this case, what I'm focusing on today, with music. And that's how we get the public engaged with the new information. That new information leads them to make new observations, new superstitions, which funds even more scientific study. And this is how humanity continually advances. So, whether you're a musician, a scientist, or a layperson watching this, it's important to recognize your place in that process and how you can support it so that humanity can continue to advance. If you enjoyed this video, do all the YouTube stuff, and also let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in some type of exclusive ethnomusicological combining concepts research. I'm considering starting an exclusive page where you can get more of this and just my scientific ramblings all of the time. So, yeah, don't be a stranger. Keep our information loop going. I'll see you guys later.